Hello, savvy listeners. I am excited you are taking the time to invest in yourself today. Savvy, the business podcast, will show you how your daily habits can create your own platform. Experts will share solutions and efficient tips to create a roadmap just for you. One thing that can make this happen: change your habits, change your success. Welcome to Savvy, the business podcast. Hello, everyone. Thanks again for coming in with Savvy, the business podcast. We are on today with Mr. Jeff Steinberg, and he is an author, a speaker. He's international, and he has a book. So we're going to come in and we're going to talk about some of the things that he's doing. We're going to talk about his book and a lot of other things, just being motivated and determined. And when you read his bio, you're going to understand what I mean by that. So we're bringing on Mr. Jeff Steinberg. Good morning. How are you, sir?
Good morning. And how are you? I'm great. I'm delighted to be here.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm glad to have you on, not only just because all of my guests are special to me, but because, you have a story that I think not only is important, but it's also an extra boost to everyone that has lost some motivation or just lost the drive to do things during, 2020. This just been such a hard year for so many people. So, I just wanted, I'm glad that you are on, because no better than you that can put that message out and give people that extra boost. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how did you get started doing what you're doing?
I was that terrible thing that happened to Irving and Ruthie Steinburg 69 years ago. I was born with what most folks call handicaps. I have no arms. I wear an artificial arm on this side, and I have nothing on this side. Literally, when I say nothing up my sleeve, I mean it. I was born with what the doctors call phocomalia, which is a fancy doctor word that means congenital birth defects. Now, the word defects, when used about a baby, is pretty ugly. Kind of like something you would throw away and start over. But that's not the case. And the doctors didn't think I was going to live. My father was the first family member to see me, and he instructed them that under no circumstances was my mom to know anything about me if I wasn't going to make it. And so my mom didn't know about my disability until I was 17 months old. And wow. She didn't see me for the first time until I was nearly 2 years old. You can keep a secret in a hospital for a long time. We're waiting for tests. We're waiting for results of tests. There have been complications, and days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into months. And before long, you start wondering if maybe whatever it is they're not telling me is so bad that it would be better if it just died. Oh. And my grandmother knew, because she was the first family member to see me. And when I was about 17 months old, one day she came into the dining room rather, and sat down behind my mom, who was dicing something for dinner. And in her broken Lithuanian accent, she said, "Ruthie, he's alive." My mom stopped what she was doing, didn't even turn around, leaned against the counter and said, "Mom, why won't they let me see him? Uh-huh. Is he ugly?" And I think she thought that I might have been facially deformed. Perhaps retarded, or like we imagine with Down syndrome and some of those, with a facial disfigurements of some sort. And my grandmother stood up. She walked over to my mom. She put her arm around her and she said, "No, Ruti, he's not ugly. He's beautiful. He has a Yiddish kopf, a Jewish head, a Jewish face." I don't imagine dinner was very pleasant that night because my father had specifically told my grandmother that if she told my mother, there would be serious repercussions. And simply because my mom confronted the issue. She didn't see me for the first time till I was almost two years old, as I stated earlier. And there, it was in a children's welfare shelter in Philadelphia. And my mom and my oldest sister, Linda, and my grandmother, and the new baby, Harriet, or Cheryl, rather. And mom picked me up, and she held me in her arms, and she paced the floor with me in her arms, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Then she turned and she put me back where she found me, swung around, stood as tall as her 4'8" frame would hold her, looked at my father, who, by the way, wasn't much more than about 5'2". And she said, "Irving, take me home. I'm ready to leave now." Now. It would be many years later, and it'd be many tears later before my mom and I would come face to face on the subject. Actually, we would come face to face on the subject when I was writing the book, Masterpiece in Progress. And it was my autobiography. And she looked at me at one point and she said, "Jeffrey, I didn't nurse you. I didn't raise you. I didn't even know how to love you."
Wow.
Wow. That'll make your day.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine your mom, the one person who is supposed to love you and be ready to care for you, telling you, "I didn't know how to love you." When I was about 2.5 years old, I was placed into the care of the Shriners Hospital for Crippled Children in Philadelphia. There are 19 Shriners hospitals for kids like me. There are 3 for kids with severe burns, and yet not one parent of any child that walks through their doors pays so much as a penny. I was in and out of Shriners Hospital for probably 5.5 years. Dr. John Royal Moore, chief of orthopedic surgery, looked at me that first time and he said, "I think we can fix this boy." I think he was kind of being a little overambitious, if you want my opinion. I wasn't broken. I was born unique. But he straightened my legs because both of my legs were scissored crisscross. Kind of like, you remember in the old spaghetti westerns when the cowboys would sit down with the Indians and they would fold their legs over top of each other? Well, that's kind of the way my legs were when I was born. Only they didn't straighten. He cut open my right knee and discovered there was no joint, and he fused it back together stiff, cleaned away valuable growth tissue, and I'll always be 4 feet 6 inches tall. Hence the title, The Tiny Giant. But more about the tiny giant later. I learned to do all kinds of things with my feet. I learned to write with my feet. Can you write with your feet, Amber?
Absolutely not.
I used to cut my big toe. Can you do that?
Nope.
I even learned to feed myself with my feet. Can you feed yourself with your feet?
No can do.
I don't know. Can you get your feet to your mouth?
Definitely not.
I don't know. I was told you were pretty good at putting your feet in your mouth.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, well, I put my feet in my mouth every day. I mean, what can I say? I just did. Anyway, moving ahead. I was in and out of Shriners Hospital for 5.5 years. I had multiple surgeries to straighten my legs, to fit me with leg braces, to fit me with my very first artificial arm when I was 4 years old. It was nothing more than a stump socket with a spoon attached so I could learn to feed myself. I went to school at Shriners, and every Friday, Dr. Moore and a bunch of interns would come and they would do rounds. Mm-hmm. And he would take my chart and he would start to read my diagnosis. Well, after about 7 weeks of this, I had pretty much memorized what he was reading. So one day I just jumped right in the middle of it, and he kept reading to himself, listening to me. And then when I was finished, he closed the chart and said what he said. And everybody just kind of clapped, and I guess that kind of became the routine. And I began to realize that I enjoyed entertaining people, making people laugh. And at the same time, I also wanted them to know that I was keenly aware of who I was and what my situation was. I left Shriners. One day they were doing rounds, and Dr. Moore said to me in front of the doctors, "Jeffrey, we're going to send you home. We can't do anything more with you till you stop growing."
Wow.
And I looked at him and I said, "Well, give it a week." Because I knew I was short. Right. All my life, Amber, I've known I was short. In fact, I told an audience one time, I said, "It's heck being short." And a lady down in the front, a Southern lady with big hair, you know, they don't just tease it, they make it mad, you know. Right. And she raises her hand, she says, young man. Now, mind you, there's about 600 to 1,000 people in the auditorium. I looked at her and I said, "Yes, ma'am." She looks up at me, she says, "You're not short. You're vertically challenged." I looked at her and said, "Ma'am, you're mentally challenged." "I'm short." I got to go home for a total of 9 months. But it got to be too hard for my mom and dad to take care of me and now 3 girls. It was the girls that were the problem. It's always the girls that are the problem. "Mom, I don't have anything to wear." They got a whole closet full of stuff they've never worn.
And we do that as adults.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. I was the only boy among 4 girls, except for my dad, of course. Yeah. But my mom was worried that I could be safe, that I should be safe. The problem is, playing it safe doesn't get the job done. It doesn't make you a success. It only makes you safe. And right. if you're not careful, playing it safe won't even do that. It's, you know, I've never been afraid to take chances. I went to public school. Right. I went out into the neighborhoods. You know, I had fun with the kids in the neighborhood. But it got to be too hard for my mom and dad to take care of me. So after 9 months, I was placed into the care of a foster family through the state, and they had a daughter that had cerebral palsy. Right. And after about 6 weeks of being there, I was told that my mom and dad were coming to pick me up and I was going to get to go home. Or at least I thought that's where I was going. And what I found out was that arrangements had been made for me to move to live at a place called Good Shepherd Home in Allentown, Pennsylvania, a home for kids with disabilities and old people. And from Halloween Day, 1960, and mind you, I was 9 years old, And I had pretty well determined I was not going to stay in this place. I did for at least 10 and a half years. The regulation was, the ruling was from the state that I would stay at Good Shepherd until I either graduated from high school, turned 18, whichever happened last, or I could stay at Good Shepherd for the rest of my life and there would be no charge. Because Good Shepherd took kids with disabilities, regardless of their financial ability to pay and regardless of their background, race, color, creed, etc. Right. So I could have stayed there. And again, I could have been safe. I wouldn't have to work. I wouldn't have to worry about clothes. There would always be food. I could take little odd jobs and make some money so I could go out to eat once in a while. That was not for me. I wanted to drive a car. I wanted to do all the things that people do. I wanted to drive a car in the worst kind of way. And if you ask anybody who's traveled with me, they'll tell you that's how I drive. In the worst kind of way. I'm kidding. I've driven in my 48 years career being in entertainment and being a motivational speaker and even a preacher and comedian. I've driven probably 4.5 million miles. I've been all over the continental United States several times. Been to Canada, driven in Canada. I have a left foot gas pedal, a brake extension pedal, and I have a little ring, looks like a donut ring. They used to call them suicide knobs. And I stick my hook in the ring, and then I just kind of do the wheel like that. And I use my left foot for acceleration and braking because my right leg doesn't bend at all, so I can't use my right leg. I right now have a 2016 Lincoln MKZ. So I've always liked Lincolns, and I've always had town cars for years up until about 2018. And a very nice young lady with a new cell phone decided to renovate the front door panel and frame of my town car.
Wow. Wow.
So the insurance company decided in their infinite wisdom that it was better to total the car. Now, mind you, the repair of the car was going to be $4,700. The insurance company paid $2,500 for storage because we couldn't send the car to the yard until I could take my adaptive equipment off. They agreed to put new adaptive equipment on my new car, so that was another $3,700. And then they paid me $3,200. So they spent $9,000 not paying $4,700 to fix my car. I told the insurance adjuster, I said, with that kind of economics, we could run a government. And then it occurred to me, that's exactly how we're running the government. Spending more money than we need to for what we don't need to pay.
Right.
But that's another topic.
Yeah. Well, let's get into your book, Masterpiece in Progress, Tiny Giant. I'm at the title itself, it says a lot. And with like you've, openly shared about your disability and, through your journey, Tiny Giant, even though that you're small, you're much bigger than what a lot of people would see. And I think that relates to a lot of entrepreneurs because they go into business thinking, I'm not big as, some of these bigger brands that's out there, and they doubt the direction that they're going and some of the things that they're doing. What can you share with somebody on being that tiny giant and not focusing so much on what other people can do and what these other brands are doing and focus on what you're doing and how you can create your platform and build?
Well, let's start with you got to know who you are.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Amber. Everybody's got a story to tell.
Yeah.
But most of us don't like our story. I'm too tall. I'm too short. My ears stick out. My nose is too big. I've got freckles. I've got zits. My freckles have zits. We've got excuses.
Right.
You know, my hair is wavy. My hair used to wave. So success in business isn't about what you know or how much you know or even who you know. Success in life and business is about asking the right questions. And the first question is, who am I? And if you don't like who you are, then nobody's going to want to buy what you have to sell. And you're going to be a failure right there. When I walk out on a stage and everybody takes a look at me, my first line when I look at the audience is, quit focusing on the handicap and start appreciating the gift. Now I've got their attention. You see, Mark Twain said the two most important days of your life is first the day you are born and then the day you find out why you were born. Well, the day you're born sets a precedent. Appreciate the gift. That's exactly right. Each of us has a story to tell. Who am I? And I like who I am. I'm competent in who I am. I knew at 15 I could drive a car. Somebody asked me once, they said, how do you drive? I said, fast. You know, I knew that there were things I could do, but I couldn't do any of it if I accepted that I was automatically handicapped simply because I don't have any arms. Now, let me give you a definition of handicap. You see, a handicap has nothing to do with wheelchairs, crutches, braces, prosthetics, or any of those things. Here's my quote. A real handicap is anything that keeps me from being or becoming all that I was created to be. A real handicap is anything that keeps me from being or becoming all that I was created to be. And I was created to be a masterpiece in progress. I was created for success. I was created to achieve. I was created to rise above circumstance. And you cannot allow your life, your future, to be defined by circumstance. By the circumstance of your birth. My future isn't defined for me because I don't have any arms. My future is defined for me because of the person that I am, and I like who I am, and because I know that there is more to me than people can see. Second question. What are my gifts? What are my talents? And what about my abilities? Or my disabilities and my limitations? Everybody's got both. I was talking to somebody a week ago, and they had posted something about if you believe you can accomplish anything. Well, that's not necessarily true. I've always wanted to fly. I've been a big fan of Superman ever since I was a kid. And the truth of the matter is, if I jump out of a window, I'm going straight down. I am never going to be able to fly.
Right.
And I don't care how many preachers I go to, I am never going to have arms.
This is crazy.
See, there are things that I have to accept, and part of that is my limitations. If you deny your limitations, you make a lie out of everything else in your life.
Ooh.
Because your abilities mean nothing unless your abilities mean that you are overcoming some sort of limitation, some sort of disability. What are my abilities? What are my disabilities? My limitations, that's right. You deny the rest of your accomplishments. That's the facts.
Wow.
Because my limitations are the things I cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot take a bath myself. I can get in the water, I can get wet, and I can get out, and I can drip dry. But I can't rub soap all over my body. I have difficulty dressing myself. I can't do that without help. There are things I cannot do. I'll never be a basketball player, although I've been called hook shot because of the hook. And the truth of the matter is, you know, there's a lot of things I will never be able to do.
Right.
But when I recognize the things I cannot do, it helps me to balance what I would like to do. And that gives me the opportunity to see the possibilities. And it helps me, like when I was thinking about driving a car, it helps me to figure out, what am I going to have to do to overcome the fact that the pedals are on the wrong side? What am I going to have to do to overcome the fact that I'm going to have to find a way to turn the wheel all the way around 360 degrees? And when I did that, I mean, I've been driving since I was, you know, out of high school or in high school. 1969, I took my driver's test. You know you're in trouble when you go to take your driver's test and the cop who is going to ride with you counts the tires on the car to make sure there are 4. Before he gets in. So, but I did. I passed. I passed the test, and I've driven, like I said, all over the country. Third question: why am I here? Remember what Mark Twain said? 2 most important days of your life: first, the day you're born, then the day you find out why you were born. It was Manchester, England, in August 2005. My team and I was going to go to London to my niece's wedding. Never been to England. And so a friend of mine who ran an organization, a missions organization, had contacts in the local prisons. So he decided, since he was booking my tour, that he would book me to speak and sing at the HMP, which stands for Her Majesty's Prisons, HMP Manchester, which was a maximum security men's prison. I haven't forgiven him since. Actually, he's a dear friend and he's a wonderful guy. So I sang and spoke, and I did something at the end of that event that I never do. I threw it open for questions. Now, first of all, let me go back up and tell you that there's a song I do called It's a Long Way Up. It's a Manilow tune. I don't do many covers, but this song really meant something to me. And there's a line in the song that says, you got to fight a little harder, you got to push a little more. And I walk into the audience, and I saw this guy sitting on the aisle about 4 rows back. He looked just like, almost a spitting image of a slightly shorter, younger Michael Clark Duncan.
You're pausing on me right now. So, okay, let's try it again.
Okay.
There we go.
I come into the audience, And I'm singing this song, and it says, you got to fight a little harder. You got to push a little more. You got to give it everything you've got to get you through the door. And so I came down into the audience, and there was this gentleman, this prisoner, on the fourth row of the aisle who looked like a younger, shorter version of the actor, the late Michael Clark Duncan. Remember him from The Green Mile?
Yes.
The guy had arms the size of tree trunks.
Yes, I love that movie.
And this guy had a pack of smokes wrapped up in his t-shirt sleeve, and his arms were folded, and he gave me this look as if to say, don't even think about it. So Amber, I didn't think about it. I just came right up to him. You got to push a little more, and I started shoving against him, and everybody around me went, looking around.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me that this was not going to end well for me.
Mm-hmm.
And after what seemed like forever was only a couple of beats in the song, the biggest, widest, whitest grin came across his face. And a voice in my head said, gotcha. So I finished the song, and I finished the event, and I threw it open for questions. And his hand goes up in the air. My head goes elsewhere. I really didn't want to deal with him because I had already gotten in trouble. But I did. Finally got to him, and he looked at me and he said, why are you here? I didn't have a lot of time to think about it. And I said, sir, you look over your left shoulder. Behind you, do you see that window with the bars? Everybody's head turned, and yeah. Do you see the razor wire wrapped around the barbed wire fence on the other side of the window with the bars? Yes. I said, in an hour, I'm going to be on the other side of that fence. And you're still going to be here in prison. So I'm not going to mince words. I'm here to tell you that you can go back to your 12 by 12 cell. You can look in the mirror above the sink next to the toilet, and you can see a masterpiece and not a criminal. You can see redemption and forgiveness and not condemnation and conviction. You can be a masterpiece in progress. The event was over. It was a chapel. I went back 5 years later. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to tell you that you can look at your circumstance, and then you can say, as Frank Reagan has said so well on the TV series Blue Bloods, it's not what you've done, it's what you're going to do next that matters.
Love that.
You see,
Love that.
That's what we've got to realize. There's always another opportunity to start over, or to start from where you're at.
Right there, right where you just said that, it's always an opportunity to start over. So many are afraid of starting over.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you have the naysayers and all of that. What advice would you give to someone that's in that space right now?
Well, you know, the natural inclination is to say don't quit. But the truth of the matter is, there is a time to quit. At least a time to quit banging your head against the wall that's not going to move. Mm-hmm. Because it's not a door. Mm-hmm. Find the door. Even if you have to turn and change direction. As long as you're moving forward. It's okay to fall. It's okay to fail. As long as you're falling forward. But to say don't quit is to say, well, just keep on banging your head against the same wall, and all you're going to come up with is more bruises.
Yeah.
The next question that I have that comes to this is, what are my limits and my boundaries? See, this answers the question you were just asking.
Mm-hmm.
What advice do I give? Find your limits. Find your boundaries. Now, let me make it very, very clear for your audience. My limitations, as I said before, are the things I cannot do. My limits are the things I will not do. Make no mistake, I will not sacrifice my morality for $1. I will not give up my reputation for a gig in a place I don't want to be seen. Find your limits and make sure they're firm. Set your boundaries. Don't keep banging into the same old wall, trying to get through boundaries and limits you don't belong in.
Yeah.
What's the old expression? Hang around people who celebrate you, not the people who tolerate you. My limits and my boundaries keep me from having to do over what I should have done right in the first place. So if you know your limits and you know your boundaries, then you know what you're going to be good at. Yeah, change your circle. Exactly. Exactly. And that leads me to the final one. The final question. See, first we had who am I? Second, we had what are my gifts and abilities? What are my limitations and my disabilities? Third question is why am I here? Fourth question is what are my limits and boundaries? And the fifth question, what kind of a mark will I leave behind for having been here?
Wow.
Now, I'm not talking about when they put me in a box and everybody walks by and says, doesn't he look like himself? By the way, I'm putting that in my casket on a card. Don't I look like myself? Here's the thing. Every day, we make a mark. We leave a legacy. We have an impact on somebody's life. Melissa, you have an impact on my life. I don't doubt that I'm going to have some sort of an impact on yours. I'm married. I have 4 children. I have 9 grandchildren. I've been all over the country. I've been blessed to receive awards in comedy and humor. I've been blessed to be recognized to speak at functions like the President's Council on Hiring Persons with Disabilities, although I don't do political correctness very well. I'll tell you that right now. I'm not very good at it. But here's the thing. What kind of a mark will I leave behind? Remember the prisoner I spoke of?
Yes.
5 years later, I go back to the prison. Same prison, same chaplain. And while the guys are setting up sound, I walk over to her and I said to her, Chaplain Barry, whatever happened to, and I nodded my head in the direction of the chair where that man was sitting. She said, you don't know, do you? So what is it I don't know? She said, well, after you left, he and a bunch of guys went down to the common room because this was a spiritual event. And they talked about it. And all they talked about was this little man with no arms that got up in his face in this concert. And that afternoon, in the common room, he made a commitment to faith. And for the next 6 weeks, all he talked about, the remainder of his sentence, she said all he talked about, except for what he needed to, was his newfound faith in the little man that changed his life. The little man with no arms that changed his life. She said, but Jeff, that's not the best part of the story. And I looked at her and I said, Chaplain Barry, how does it get any better? And Melissa, she said to me, I found out recently that after he left the prison, he went back to Nigeria and he became a pastor. That's the legacy. That's the mark. I can tell you a story about a 13-year-old in a school that I spoke at whose mom, unbeknownst to this boy, considered suicide before he got home that evening, simply because she and her husband had a fight. And he came home and told her about this guy with no arms who made them laugh, who told them they were a masterpiece in progress. And he dragged her to a concert I was doing that evening in that same city. And she wrote me and sent me a letter 2 weeks later saying, "Thank you, you saved my life. If you can do what you do with what you've got, I can take another step and maybe give it another chance."
Wow.
Every single day, we leave a mark. Now, if your goal is to be rich, there are people out there that will tell you what steps you can take to be rich. But if you want to be a leader, if you want to be a success in life, if you want people to aspire to something you've got, more than money, then you got to know who you are. You got to know what you have to give. You got to recognize what you can't give. You got to know why you're here. You got to know your boundaries and your limits.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to have some sort of a goal, a mark to leave behind. I'm a tiny giant. I'm 4 feet 6 inches tall.
That's a great way to come to an end of the show, because I think you said so much in everything that you said, with, again, this year being a year like it has been, and there's been so many people that's depressed about what's going on. Businesses have had to close, employees without jobs. I mean, so many things has happened this year. And it's been good for some because they was able to start businesses, and we were forced to rethink things and pivot and do the things that we need to do to keep going. So
and it's important, Melissa, that they know the difference between quitting and giving up.
Yeah.
See, don't give up. Don't let anybody steal your dream, but know when is enough in one direction. I've been used to standing on stages all of my life. For 48 years, I've stood on stages and sung and spoke. Now I'm having to rethink that. And now I'm having, and yes, COVID's been terrible. But in the grand scheme of things, being an overcomer
mm-hmm.
is important. And we can do it. And we can be an overcomer amidst COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Because COVID is only a situation, only a circumstance.
Yeah.
And your goal needs to be to rise above your circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let your circumstance define you.
Yeah.
And that's important. I tell myself every single day, Psalm 139:14, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. God makes no mistakes. God makes no junk. I'm a masterpiece in progress, a tiny giant. And by the way, the book is published by Glove Prints Press, and it's available on Kindle and all the other outlets. And I have music CDs, and you'll tell them how to get in touch with me and all of that. If they want to book me, I'm available.
Well, let's go ahead and let everybody know how to get in touch with you, all your social media and everything.
Yeah, my website is jeffsteinberg.net. But if you want to book me for an event, contact Christopher Williams at cornbreadbooking.com, Cornbread Booking Agency.com.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on and sharing your story. And I mean, everything that you've said is so powerful. So everyone that's listening to this, whether it's currently or in replay, just listen to this over and over, because you're going to keep getting messages out of it. And he referred back to a film which I love, The Green Mile. And even in that movie, there's a lot of messages. And as many times as I watch that movie, so every time I look at it, something else comes to me from that. So the same thing with this interview. As you watch it, numerous times, something else is going to come to you. So I just hope that you really listen to the messages and hear the message, and consider yourself a tiny giant. Don't always go in with wanting to be that big giant, this, huge brand that's coming out. Be that tiny giant for now. And then you can grow, because that tiny giant is the ones that's going to be looked at, instead of the ones that want to be, whoa, we're really big. It takes time to get there. So just know your limits, understand what that limit is and your boundaries, and you're going to grow. You're going to be able to be successful and travel the world just like Jeff has done. So thanks.
Let me leave you with this thought. My father used to tell me all the time, Jeffrey, a winner never quits, and a quitter never wins.
Nice. Very nice. Thanks again, Jeff, for coming on.
I'm so glad to be on your show. And thank you, folks, for enjoying us and supporting and supporting Savvy Business Productions.
Thank you. Thank you so much.